Steve Cross is back with us one more time. We'll be making our next presentation on cold central plant recycling.
All right, we're going to talk about cold central plant recycling. Quick overview of what it is, how we make it, and how it's been performing. ARRA kind of breaks cold central plant recycling under the heading of cold recycling, and it falls under cold in place recycling and cold central plant recycling. We throw these both under the heading of cold recycling because there's really no difference in the mix. Cold in place, we mill the wrap up and we treat it right there on the road and put it back down. With cold central plant, we're taking the wraps come off of a road and gone into a central location, and we can process it in a pug mill mixer, as you see down at the bottom, or out west where we have a lot of single unit trains. I've seen them just park a processing unit on the road and process it through there. So the question really, most of the time when we talk about, or I get questions about cold central plant recycling, it's not so much what is the mix, but it's where or how do you use it. So that's really what I'm going to concentrate on in the next few minutes. But with cold central plant, we're going to take clean wrap and we're going to turn it into a new pavement mix. So a couple of keys is I want to keep that wrap clean, properly stockpiled and clean. The quality of that stockpile is going to influence the quality of your product. More than likely, I'm going to have to crush that wrap. So I want to crush it down to a specified gradation. We're going to mix it with a bituminous recycling agent. It's either emulsified asphalt or foamed asphalt. This will be done at a central plant location. And then we're going to transport it to the laydown area. We're going to place it as a recycled mix. We're going to place it just like you would a cold central plant mix, or cold in place mix, I'm sorry. Compact it, and like a cold in place recycled mix, it's going to go down a little higher air voids. It's going to need a surface treatment. One of the differences really, it's a little bit easier. You can fractionate your wrap if you want to try to change the gradation a little bit. So you can see in these slides where they're taking the wrap, they're running through and they're crushing it. Then they're running it through some scalping screens and putting it in some cold feed bins. So you have the minus number 4 wrap in one cold feed, the 1 inch to number 4 wrap in the middle. And in this one, they wanted to improve the gradation of the aggregate gradation a little bit, so they added some 3/8 inch chips. You just want to be sure, especially when you're adding uncoated aggregate, that it's cost effective. And so the mix design will give you a good indication as whether you may or may not need additional aggregate, but adding new aggregate is going to up the recycling agent demands. So you want to be sure that that's cost effective. There are basic types of CCPR, so we'll talk about these and talk about where you can use them. The most common is by far what we'd call central facility CCPR. Many asphalt contractors and milling contractors have large stockpiles of wrap. So this wrap has come from various roadways and been stockpiled at their central location for later use. And it's becoming, especially in urban locations, a little hard to put all of this wrap back into hot mix. So CCPR is a really good use of this material. As far as how does it behave, there was an NCHRP study 9-51 done by University of Maryland, where they looked at dynamic modulus values of CCPR, CIR, and bituminous stabilized FDR. And their conclusion was the dynamic modulus curves of all three of these materials overlap. So they were very similar, and they also ended up being similar to Virginia DOT's 1 inch super paved mix. What can you take from that? Well, central facility CCPR mix, it's going to behave like a binder mix or a base mix. So it can be used pretty much anywhere you'd place a binder or a base mix. One other place you can use this, if you have areas, if you have wrap in some more rural locations where you have a lot of gravel surface roads and you want a cost-effective way to upgrade these, you can place a central CCPR mix on these gravel roads, and they'll require a surface course. So depending on the traffic, you can go from a double chip seal or cape seal to an asphalt overlay. But this is by far the most common type of CCPR we use. Another place it can be used well, there are parts of the country where they built a whole lot of lower volume roads, not only without paved shoulders, but without shoulders. And we've seen this done in my home state. They have a program where they're adding shoulders to the road, and these CCPR mixes make a great shoulder mix. They come in place, very economical to add a paved shoulder to some of these roads. Another type of CCPR is what we call on-site. There are some places where we can't get in and cold in place recycle a mix. So we might want to do CCPR. So we're going to take the wrap that's milled from a roadway, the same roadway that's going to be reconstructed. We'll haul that to a close temporary processing site. We'll reprocess it and return it to the same road. We've seen some very innovative uses with this process. I've seen it used with CIR to allow much deeper pavement treatments, allow us to go 6+ inches deep, all in place. And I've seen it used with FDR to allow us to get down and treat the base and subgrade without wasting that asphalt material that we had to mill off to get down to that. So I have just a couple of examples to show you. This was an award-winning project out in Utah where they had an existing pavement, bad thermal cracks, quite wide thermal cracks. This was quite deep or thick pavement, quite a bit of deterioration occurring along the cracks. DOT came up with some money, a fixed amount of money that they could use to work on this road. So the proposal was put in there to use to combine CIR with CCPR to allow them to treat 8.5 miles for just $3.2 million and to remove enough of that transverse crack or thermal crack that hopefully it wouldn't return back. So the process, they came in and they milled off the top 3 inches of the pavement and they hauled it to a central processing spot on the site. Then they came in and they performed CIR to another 3 inches, so that allowed them to get down to a 3-inch depth. And so then once they finished with the CIR, they went back to the stockpile. They hauled their processing unit from the CIR train and set it up there and processed the CCPR mix and produced a CCPR mix, hauled it back out to the site, placed it and compacted it, and then put a surface treatment on it, I believe, but they were able to pave 8.5 miles at a little over $3 million. So a very economical way that allowed them to do a deep treatment by combining CIR with CCPR. The other way, example is we have a lot of pavements that we need to get down and fix the base in our subgrade. So they either need base stabilization or base and subgrade stabilization. So this was a project that also needed widening. The existing pavement was only 20 foot wide. It was in an Amish area, I believe, where they had horse and buggies going by and not a lot of room to drive around and pass these slow moving vehicles. So the process was they wanted to rebuild this pavement and widen it, make it 26 foot wide, pave shoulders. So the process then, proposed section was to come in and do 10 inches of FDR, cement treated FDR, full width. So this is a picture of the existing pavement. It was in pretty bad shape. Didn't have paved shoulders, it just had gravel shoulders. So they came in and they milled off the asphalt and they hauled that to a central facility and stockpiled it where they could make a CCPR mix. They trenched out the material on the sides and came in and did FDR on the aggregate base, and I believe they got into the subgrade and made a 10-inch cement stabilized FDR full width across there. Processed the CCPR mix, and there they're using a pug mill. Hauled the CCPR mix back out on the road, placed and paved that, and then put, I believe, 2-inch HMA on the top of it, and you see the finished pavement. The contract to do this was for it was 17.24 lane miles at just under $5 million, and the engineer's estimate of a more conventional replacement was nearly $12 million, so a significant cost savings and an innovative way to do something with that material that you've had to mill off to get in when you needed to treat the base or the subgrade. The last type of CCPR, it's not used that much, but it's an imported CCPR, so we're going to take wrap from one roadway, haul it to a close temporary site, process it, and then immediately return it to a different site where it might be needed. Not that common, but it's been done a few times. So for just general information on a cold central plant recycling mix, again, you have two options. You can get a copy of the basic asphalt recycling manual, or you can go to roadresource.org. If you go to the treatment toolbox, this time we're going to go to the treatment resource center. And if you were to click on the Treatment Resource Center, it would list all the resources. And again, mine are the ones in green and yellow. And if you wanted to know about Cold Central Plant, you could click on that. And this would be the home page that you would see on under the Treatment Resource Center. It's basically kind of a condensed or the Reader's Digest version of the basic asphalt recycling manual. The entire web page is over 500 pages long, so it's quite comprehensive. But for each one of these treatments, you can get an overview. You can get pre-construction information, site selection, material selection, construction information, preparation, weather requirements, equipment calibration, etc., quality assurance issues, troubleshooting, inspection and testing. We have a few research and performance studies and success stories and a photo gallery as well. So it's quite comprehensive, an excellent source of information on just what is a CCPR mix. The other thing that we have, ARRA has put out a set of best practice guidelines. And so there's a 3 series. There's a 100 series, a 200 series, and a 300 series. The 100 series is basically a best practice guideline. It's written in specification language as kind of a guide specification with notes to explain things further when there's more than one option. The 200 series is project sampling and mix design guidelines. We go through and give you some tips on sampling the road to get not only to determine what's there and if it's a suitable candidate, but sampling for mix design. And then we have our mix design guidelines. Jason told you about the AASHTO provisional mix design procedures that are out there. They're actually based on the ARRA's mix design series. And then the 300 series is contractor QC guidelines, so recommended quality control checks for one of these processes, and it has remediation actions if you have some distresses that show up. And these are available for CIR, CCPR, and FDR. They're available on the ARRA webpage, so that's www.arra.org and /pages, and under the resource section, there's a folder that says guidelines, and you can click on there and you can download them from there. As far as performance, Virginia DOT has kind of led the country with the amount of CCPR mixes they've put down. So they reconstructed I-81 several years ago and used a combination of FDR, CCPR, and CIR. And they put these same things down at the NCAT test track. So these are the same sections that were down on I-81. The FDR section had 5 inches of CCPR and a 4-inch asphalt overlay. The other section had a 4-inch and a 6-inch asphalt overlay over 5 inches of CCPR and 6 inches aggregate base. They've been through 3 complete cycles at the NCAT test track. That's 9 years by now. They had approximately 30 million easels. The S12 section with FDR, they've decided that behaved as a perpetual pavement. The other 2 sections made it all 30 million easels with only minor distress. They were beginning to show distress though, and have been taken out of service. But 30 million easels is quite a long time. They perform quite well. If they're put on a CIR and CCPR, will perform quite well, given an adequate base and overlay for the traffic. So that was the one extreme for an interstate type pavement. The other extreme was the low volume roads. So on the NCAT Lee Road 159 pavement preservation study, they had one 100-foot test section left over. So Buzz Powell decided to put down a 5-inch CCPR mix over a 3/4-inch HMA thin lay. This was placed in 2012. One lane, there's a rock quarry and a asphalt plant at the end. So coming out, they have a good record of loaded trucks, how many and what they weigh, and coming back in, they're empty. So they have good traffic records. I need to update this. They've probably had about 1.5 million easels by now, and the performance has been excellent. Less than 4% low severity cracking, less than 3 millimeters of rutting. The ARRA is high, but it's a 100-foot series of 100-foot sections, so it's kind of hard to build a smooth pavement. But the good news is the ARRA has not increased with time. So it's performed quite well in a low volume situation. So that led to the 3rd test track, or and this one was put down on US 280. We saw what we would do on an interstate type pavement with a really good base and a 4 to 6 inch asphalt overlay. We saw what it would do on a low volume road with a 3/4 inch thin lay. And so the question that came up on this one was, well, how much can it, how will it perform? How much can it actually take before we start seeing distress? So they put a 1-inch HMA thin lay over 4 inches of CCPR, and they also had 4 inches, another section that had 4 inches of CIR, and there was 4 inches of old pavement underneath this. The road has a little over 18,000 AADT with 16% trucks. It's had over 5 years of traffic by now and over 3.2 million easels, and its tracking's good. IRI is good. We've seen a little bit of densification rutting in 2 of the test sections. We expect that to stabilize, but we hope to get a lot of good information on this. This is a section, again, that was put down with what we considered was too thin of an asphalt overlay for this much traffic. We're really interested to see how this works, how it performs, and hopefully will give us a little bit better information on required overlay thickness for different traffics. Well, kind of a quick overview of cold central plant. But CIR and CCPR, they're economical and sustainable construction and maintenance procedures. CIR, as I said before, is best suited for cracked pavements with sound bases. CCPR can be considered anywhere when we place a multi-lift HMA. Again, they perform like a binder or base mix. They can be used quite successfully and quite economically, CIR in combination with CCPR to get a deeper treatment, or CCPR in combination with FDR when you need to do a complete reconstruction and get down and do some base or subgrade. Again, can result in a very economical section. The only caveat there is CIR and CCPR require a wearing surface. And I would say that a CCPR mix performs very similar, is very similar to a CIR mix. So all the stuff that Jason told you in the previous one about CIR would really apply for CCPR as well. So with that, I know that was a quick overview. I appreciate your time, and if you for any more information or if you would like a copy of the BARM, get in touch with me and we'll be glad to get one to you. So thank you very much.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.